Alright, some It Chapter 2 spoilers. I know I don't have to make this video. It's gonna be a long one, because I have a lot to say about this movie. In case you couldn't tell from my spoiler-free review that's like over 9 minutes long, I thank you for watching it, if you did. And that is a spoiler warning. If you have not seen It Chapter 2, you should go see it, because it is at least good. It received generally positive reviews, right? Like, the general consensus, as I understand it, is that it is a good movie. Not the best movie ever, but still good, because it is good. Alright, you've been warned. Now let's float on into It Chapter 2. So the movie starts out with the return of Pennywise. It does take its time building up to it though, because you have the gay couple at the carnival and they get attacked by these haters, which is actually right out of the book. I haven't read the book and I'm not really planning on reading it at this point, but I do know a thing or two about it, like some differences from it compared to these movies. But the hate crime leading up to Pennywise's return after 27 years of slumber, it was pretty well done. And when Pennywise has that dude and his boyfriend is watching from across the river, you see Pennywise's face just go, just bites right into his chest. I was like, holy shit, alright. Pennywise is back. Then you see Mike, he's all grown up, he's listening to the police scanner, and he hears the crime of Pennywise's attack. So he goes to the scene of the crime and he sees the blood writing on the bridge that says, "Come home." So he decides to call up all of his loser friends from back in the day. And here's where you see where they are now in their lives. Bill, played by James McAvoy, has become a successful film screenwriter, which is funny because when you see him outside the studio, you see a big old Warner Brothers logo right there on the side of the building. I just thought it was funny because, you know, it's a Warner Brothers movie, so you have Warner Brothers logo in the movie. It kind of reminded me of the Hunger Games, I think it was Mockingjay Part 1, where you see the logo of the franchise in the movie. It's like, alright, they can get away with that, kinda. I don't know, it just made me laugh. Eddie has ended up being married to someone who looks pretty much exactly like his mother. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's the exact same actress, just with different hair. But it was kind of weird. Richie, played by Bill Hader, has become a stand-up comedian, which is different from the book and the miniseries as far as I know. I mean, I have seen the miniseries, and I think he was a talk show host in there, if I remember correctly. I've only seen it once. These reintroductory scenes to the characters, they do seem a little rushed through. Like, you see Eddie in his car, he gets the call, he learns it's Mike calling, and then a car crashes into his car. Then it cuts to Richie having already received the call and going outside his building and throwing up. I understand that you want to keep the scenes moving for pacing's sake, but maybe they rushed through them a little too fast. Beverly Marsh is in an abusive relationship, which I do remember from the miniseries. Like, she had an abusive father, so now she's just in an abusive marriage. That husband's acting could have been a little better though, if you ask me. And my friend who I saw this movie with. And Stanley. Alright, here we go. Like I said, I saw the miniseries, so how could I forget what happens to Stanley? I'm pretty sure it happened this way in the book too, but I know it happened this way in the miniseries. Stanley gets the call and remembers what he went through when he was a kid, and ultimately decides, yeah, fuck that, I'm not going back to that thing. Because as we all remember, that thing was trying to eat his face. That, more than what it has done to any of the other kids, is like the worst childhood trauma ever. So he's like, yeah, I don't want that thing to try to eat my face again, so I'm out. He's in the bathtub, he slits his wrists and kills himself and writes the word "it" in his own blood on the wall. I remember that scene from the miniseries because I remember being like, holy shit, that's gotta be like an iconic shot. And you see it for like a good amount of seconds in the miniseries. In this movie, you only see it for like half a second. I do wish they could have dwelled on it a little more, but again, we gotta get the story moving, so I get it. So aside from poor Stanley, all the rest of the losers do decide to come back to Derry, Maine, and they reunite in that Chinese restaurant. Meanwhile, Pennywise has come back to murdering kids. That scene at the baseball game where Pennywise gets poor little Vicky, that's a great scene. Because he lures this helpless little girl underneath the bleachers, and he's all like, I want to be your friend. And the kid's like, you're not my friend, you're scary. And she turns around and walks away, and you just hear him go, he's like, people don't want to be my friend because of the way I look. I just laughed. I thought it was funny. It was great acting from Bill Skarsgård. And he's like, I can blow that birthmark right off your face. Let's count to 3. 1, 2. And then he just pauses. And the kid's like, you're supposed to say 3. Great scene. I love that. So a little later on, Mike is talking to Bill, and he reveals that he stayed in Derry to figure out how to kill this creature once and for all. And he explains that he went to go visit this Native American tribe. I forget what the tribe's name is. And they showed him. They tripped him the hell out. And he saw when Pennywise first arrived. And you see this meteor coming down from the sky. And I was like, alright, so is it an alien or something? I kind of would have preferred that we didn't see this meteor shot. We just kind of come to our own conclusion about what it is and where it came from. Like, maybe it's this thing that's just manifested somewhere beneath the earth or something. I don't know. I get that it's Stephen King lore, so that's probably why they did it that way. I'm just saying though. But apparently its true form or source of power or whatever are these 3 revolving lights called the Deadlights, which you saw a little bit in It Chapter 1 when it had Beverly. You don't want to look directly at these things because you go into a weird comatose state like Richie does later on in this movie, and like Beverly did in chapter 1. That is pretty scary to me. Just the image of someone's face where there are no pupils where they should be, it's just white blank eyes, that's always freaked me out, like my entire life. When I was in like middle school or something, there was an older kid who would bully me by doing that in my face, so yeah, to me that's just not a pleasant image. But anyway, Mike reveals to Bill that the way to destroy this creature once and for all is through the ritual of Chud, which is from the book, but not the miniseries. And to perform this ritual, all these losers have to find an artifact somewhere in Derry, Maine, where they have like a certain special memory or something. And this is where a lot of the flashbacks come in, which in a couple of them, you see this clubhouse that apparently the losers had when they were kids. They're like, oh yeah, we had this clubhouse we built after the rock fight. You know, the rock fight you saw in It Chapter 1. You remember the rock fight, but I don't remember any clubhouses. I was like, is this retconning Chapter 1? I mean, again, it's not retconning Chapter 1, but it kind of feels like it is because you're like, what is this clubhouse? Why have I never heard of it before now? This Castle Byers-esque clubhouse that they just have to themselves, like the hostel from Runaways or something. I don't know. So now we have the scenes where each of these adults are searching for their artifacts and they get visits from Pennywise again. And a couple of these scenes stood out to me. First of all, Beverly's scene where she goes back to her old apartment. You saw it in the teaser trailer, which yeah, most of it is like it was in the teaser trailer. And then the old lady comes out and she's this big CG zombie old lady that does look kind of cartoony, but still pretty scary. But that's not even the part that stood out to me. The part that stood out to me was after that, when you see the Bill Skarsgård Pennywise, you know, the scene that grossed me out in both trailers. But ultimately, I really like it because he turns around, he looks at Beverly and he goes, "You haven't changed their futures. If you don't believe me, close your eyes and see." Whoa! It was like a warning. It was cool. It was creepy. He like scratches those red marks onto his face. Ugh, cool scene. But then we get one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. I love this next scene. And it's Richie's scene when he goes to the park. First of all, you see his flashback. He's in the arcade. He's playing Street Fighter with, I guess, Henry Bowers' little cousin. And then Bowers and his friends, they come in and they bully Richie about being gay, supposedly. Which if you watch the scene, little Richie's not denying it. He's just kind of standing there in shock at the assumption, but he doesn't say anything, he just leaves. I think that's one of the first scenes in the movie that really hints towards his true sexuality, but I wasn't really picking it up at that point. But then it cuts to Richie in the present and he's at the park and there are all these people around. Then he sees Pennywise on the statue. This is the scene I really love. I love this scene. You see Pennywise floating down on all these balloons and he starts singing. He's like, "I know your secret, your dirty little secret." Just the way he's kind of taunting him like that. I love that scene. And you see everyone behind Richie just kind of swaying to it. Great stuff. Bill's scene is kind of funny though, because it actually features a cameo from the man himself, Stephen King. When I saw him in the antique shop, I was like, holy shit, this is like a Stan Lee cameo, but it's Stephen King instead. You know, the creator of the material for which this movie is being made from makes a cameo in said movie. Maybe that's like his homage to Stan Lee or something, I don't know. And Bill sees his old silver bike in the front. Stephen King recognizes Bill as the famous writer, which is ironically funny because he's like, "You're the famous author, you can afford the bike." I was all like, said the famous author? That was just hilarious. All right, let's talk about Bowers because, yeah, Henry Bowers ended up actually surviving that fall down the well at the end of chapter 1. It shows a flashback of him waking up from the gray water and then he gets placed under arrest for the murder of his father. So he's been spending his days in an insane asylum. So when it comes back for him, he goes nuts and so he sees that balloon under his bed and it pops and it shows zombie Patrick Hockstetter from the first movie, who can drive a car apparently as a zombie. But really, Bowers didn't do anything in this movie. Like, he shows up to cause a couple problems and then he dies himself. He wasn't really that much of an obstacle for the losers. Yeah, he stabbed Eddie in the face, but really that was it. And Eddie seemed fine after that. So yeah, I'm not sure what Bowers was doing in this movie. Probably would have been better if he just died at the end of chapter 1 by falling down the well. Again, that would change the story of the actual book, but I feel like for this movie it would have worked better. So now we're gonna fast forward to when they go to the Neibolt house from chapter 1, because I've heard some people talk about some movie references that this movie makes. One of them being when they see Stan's head grow legs and shit. You see Richie all like, "You gotta be fucking kidding." Now, the movie that this is referring to, I've only seen it once, and it was a while ago. That would be The Thing, John Carpenter's 1982 classic. Because apparently the same thing happens in that movie. Like, you see the head sprout legs, and then one of the guys says, "You gotta be fucking kidding." But at least that movie reference made sense within the flow of the scene in this movie. There's another reference I'll get to later on that I felt like it didn't fit, and it just came out of nowhere. But I'll get to that. We are getting towards the end of the movie now. All the losers, they go down back to the cistern where they were when they were kids back at the end of chapter 1. But this time they go deeper underground and they see this weird, spiky thing. This is apparently where it first crashed onto Earth. They try to do the ritual. You see the deadlights coming down. They're all chanting, "Turn light into dark, turn light into dark." You see the deadlights go down into this lampshade thing, but it doesn't work because you see this big balloon just come out of it and it goes bigger and bigger and bigger and it pops and you see Pennywise's final form in this movie, which is like a half Pennywise, half spider giant monster thing. Now I remember in the miniseries its final form was just a big giant spider monster thing, but in this movie they chose to go with like half half that and half Pennywise, which I actually did feel like it made sense because you do want to have like a consistent face with your villain, because we know Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise clown face as it. That's the face we are most familiarized with as that character. If the losers were fighting anyone else, it wouldn't feel as fulfilling when they defeat it. So it did make sense and it ended up working for me. But the flip side of that is that it did look really CG. Like this giant Pennywise face coming after everyone, it looked really fake. Again, I know it is fake, but again, Thanos looked real, so there's no real excuse for it. And then it starts referring to itself as the Eater of Worlds. I'm like, alright, so this thing is like Galactus pretty much? It goes from world to world just destroying shit? I don't know. Again, I'd rather not think about that and just have my own conclusions about what it actually is. But it thrusts all the losers into these like nightmarish scenarios that they had to fight their way out of. And Beverly's nightmarish scenario is the one with the out of place movie reference. You know what it is. She's trapped in the bathroom stall and it's overflooding with blood, and you see the faces come in through the crack in the door. Like you see Greta from the first one, then you see Mr. Keene, he's all like, you smell like Lois Lane. Then you see Henry Bowers, he's all like, here's Johnny. I was like, what? Okay, random Shining reference. That was weird. For a split second, I actually thought it was Jack Nicholson's face in that scene, but it wasn't. If you look closely, it's actually Henry Bowers. But it just felt so out of place to me. I'm like, where did that come from? What relevance does it have? Answer, none. But then Ben and Beverly save each other from each other's nightmare scenarios, and they end up with each other in the end because Ben is like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm the one that wrote that poem, not Bill. And Beverly's like, oh yeah. Okay, I love you now. Now, they do have really good chemistry, it's true. I bought it. And when Richie is caught in the deadlights, which again, the eyes with no pupils thing freaks me out, Eddie comes out of nowhere and saves him by just throwing that spear thing like a javelin, like the Night King from season 7 of Game of Thrones at the dragon. Just throws that thing, it ends up nailing Pennywise, and Eddie saved Richie. Which, yeah, great, but then all of a sudden, boom, Eddie just gets impaled through the back. Like that. That sucked. We have a casualty. Eddie dies and it's sad as hell. What really makes it sad is the way Richie reacted to it, which I will get to later. Although I do love Eddie's last words. He's looking at Richie, he's like, I have a confession, I have to tell you something. I fucked your mom. That was funny, and those are great last words from him. For a movie like this, I felt it worked. So the 5 remaining losers learn that they can beat it by basically bullying it into submission. So they start really standing up to this thing. They're all like, you're nothing but a bully and an imposter. And you see giant Pennywise spider thing just going like, and he starts shrinking down. Gets to the point where he's just nothing but a shrivelly looking baby thing, like in the corner on the ground there. He's just all like, eh. It was kind of funny looking, I'll admit. And they're all chanting, clown, clown. And Mike leans down, rips out its heart, and they all come together, they all grab it, and they just crush it. So yes, they have won. They have defeated it. It is no more. Victory! So now we have our epilogue. They're all in that lake, and Richie just starts bawling. That's the scene where I was like, yeah, alright, Bill Hader is just amazing in this movie. Because I totally bought that he was truly sad about his friend dying. And not only his friend, his crush. Because it turns out that he was carving names and letters on the bridge when he was a kid. And at the very end, you see R and E. So it maybe, like, it's kind of hinting at, it never really tells you outright, but it's hinting at maybe Richie had a crush on Eddie his whole life or something. Confirming that, yes, Richie is gay, so that's cool. But he was really freaked out about it and he never wanted to admit it. So when Pennywise is going, I know your secret, that's what the secret was. And it really freaked him out. I don't know, I just found it really effective storytelling and great acting from Bill Skarsgård and Bill Hader. One more thing I'd like to point out before I get to my conclusion, Bill Denborough, James McAvoy's character, he has the exact same phone case I have. In the epilogue, when you see Bill in his house, and he's talking with Mike on the phone about Stanley's letter, he opens up his phone case, and I was like, that's the exact same phone case I have. How about that? I don't know, I just thought it was cool. So in conclusion, I thought It Chapter 2 was a great movie. And I gotta say, I am thankful for both of these It movies, It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. I'm thankful for them because before It Chapter 1 came out, I wouldn't really dare to go see a horror movie in theaters. Like I've said, I'm not the biggest fan of the horror genre, and I still don't go see every horror movie that comes out. And I know I saw Alien Covenant before It Chapter 1 came out, but Alien Covenant had some sci-fi elements that were really cool, and plus, I wouldn't really call Alien Covenant a scary movie. The It movies, I would call scary movies. These movies, they really introduced me to what the horror genre is like, or the good movies in that genre anyway. They're not about being scary for the sake of being scary. They're about stories about characters going through scary shit. And I personally think that's pretty cool. So thank you to the directors, the screenwriters, all the actors, Bill Skarsgård, for letting me know that horror movies are pretty freaking cool. Next one I'm excited for, Dr. Sleep, coming out in a few months. Final trailer for it just came out and still looks pretty cool. It does, it looks really creepy. And that's also based on a Stephen King novel, like these movies were. So that's cool too. I recently watched Carrie for the first time. That is a good movie, dude. I don't know if it's on Netflix anymore because Netflix is constantly taking shit off of there, but if it still is, then go watch it if you haven't seen it yet. It's a simpler plot, it's faster paced, it's accessible is what I'm trying to say. There's only one real jump scare in it, it's at the end, it did get me though. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Stephen King horror movies, for the most part, they're pretty freaking sweet. Wasn't a fan of the new Pet Sematary, but anyway. It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2. Which one do you prefer? Or better question, what's your favorite Pennywise scene in both movies? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.